We'll start this out again by just going through a quick slideshow that I think kind of gives you an overview of what residential solar looks like in our region, and get into the details that this would be the equivalent of having a solar consultation for the most part without this design specific to your home. But I think this is the meat potatoes of any solar consultation. And then we're going to end with really just an ask us anything. Like it can be whatever's on your mind. And I think there's a lot of power to that. If you got a question, the person next to you might have the same question. They might have a different question. They may not have thought of that. But like I've done this, I've done these consultations hundreds of times. I think I'll cover a lot of what people are curious about, but there's always something every so often that I'm like super surprised by. That's a really good question that I hadn't really thought of. But yeah, Bill, you think we're good to jump into this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, guys, we are going to be recording this just for the folks who couldn't make it, or for future, just future, so I don't have to repeat myself. Because I think we could do this, every week. I've been having this conversation all year that I think a lot of this stuff is things I wish I could just get up on top of City Hall with a megaphone and just like scream at people. Like I'm having the same conversations over and over and over all year about, hey, here's where the value is. Like the value still exists. Just here's what it looks like. Because a lot of people have had, an experience with solar and they've made up their mind. And then now it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to tune back in until something really like catches my attention. And it's like, I do think we have those. And so it's like, I would love to get this out in a place where it's like, we can just like, hey, go watch this webinar. It has everything. Because I have this conversation just about every day since 2026 started. But yeah, let's get into it. So if we're not already, we're going to start recording. Thanks for joining us. I am Jake Head. I am the residential sales manager here at Solar States. I'm super happy to be here. A little bit of the context for this, I think, can be framed around this communication we had recently between the governor and PECO. So like, why are we here? We're here because of this. We're here because PECO has raised the rates multiple times. It is becoming public opinion. It is public knowledge that this is happening. And so I just like starting with this quote that, Governor Shapiro, who obviously has political ambitions, beyond governor of Pennsylvania, but I just think this like is hyper specific to what's going on in our lives. Like last year, PECO raised rates on Pennsylvanians and made an obscene, almost $1 billion in profit. They could have used that money to offset people's costs. Instead, they passed it on to shareholders. Now they want to jack it up even more. It's pure greed. And I'll do everything I can to stop it. That was like a direct quote that is hyper about our lives. And they raised rates anyway. So here we are. We're talking about solar. We're talking about ways to mitigate this. But like, I think just acknowledging some of the discourse that's happening is cool. And just, giving you a reason to tune in and a reason to go, oh yeah, that is happening around me. I have felt that. And we'll get into like hyper specific what has happened to your bill and what your bill looks like. And we'll kind of talk about that. But a little bit about me. I joined Solar States last year. My background, my story, my journey into sales was I did stand-up comedy through my 20s and early 30s. That was like my everything. I lived in, New York, Atlanta. I was just talking about, being in LA. I started having kids, and, you come to the realization pretty quick that there's no middle class in comedy. You're either working poor, or I think Nate Bargatze is starting his own Disneyland. Like that's the gap. You're either just like grinding it out, barely having enough, or you are the new Walt Disney and you're starting your own amusement park. There's no middle class in comedy. And so I kind of made the pivot. I went back to school, finished my degree, landed in solar. I was with another company to begin my career, working in Philadelphia. Little bit about that. We can go into the next slide with my other company. I was a part of the lobbying effort to try and mitigate the damage by the big, beautiful bill. So that was a big part of my 2025 was we went down to DC and we're trying to have meetings with, senators, congressmen, whoever would meet with us. My previous company was based out of Louisiana. So we had a lot of weird inroads with Republican leadership. We were in the same, district as of Steve Scalise, Speaker Johnson. We had a lot of ears of people you would think would just be like, no, no, no. But when they have constituents that have real issues, they hear you differently. They don't hear you as a political issue. They hear you as a business in their district issue. And so one of the very, very not talked about issues that we were able to win is, yes, the Big Beautiful Bill gutted solar. It eliminated tax credits that existed since the Bush administration. Like, it was what people are saying it was. But one of the very weird caveats was we were able to keep third-party ownership as being able to access the tax credit. And that is what's creating the landscape for 2026. And I'll kind of go into more of that as we go through this slideshow and just kind of represent it as it is what it is. You'll hear that a lot from me. I'm not trying to like sway you into anything. I'm just trying to express where value is at the current time and why it's there. It's not I don't benefit from it in any way. It's just, here's the circumstances in place, and here's how I would represent them to my mom, my grandma, anybody who I care about. This is what I would tell them, telling you guys. So what happened was the Big Beautiful Bill obviously passed. And what we saw in 2025 was akin to a gold rush. We had record level of sales last summer because we have record interest in people trying to get that 30% tax credit before it expired. And now we're here. We're in 2026. So what do we do? What do we have? What are people thinking about? Why are people going solar? So we as solar states, we've doubled down at the community level. We want the community talking to the community. And we've done that through a referral program. We've done that through offering yard signs. We've done that through, getting off from buying leads. We want the community talking to the community. We want to be doing events. So one of the things we're doing is if anybody goes solar, they're going to get $500, and whoever refers them is going to get $500 when they go solar. So we're trying to pivot to these hyper local value, talking to value. Hey, I went solar a couple of years ago. I don't know what's out there now, but maybe you should hit up solar states. Like, that's where we're at. And I'll get into why someone still should go solar in 2026, because I firmly believe it. I am someone who I am going solar in 2026. I was with other companies. I had the opportunity to go solar. I saw what was out here for 2026. I saw that I uniquely qualified, and it really was a benefit to my home and my family. And I've pulled the trigger, and I've gone through one of these, and I can kind of get into why and how and anything. If you want to ask personal questions, I'm happy to answer them. But going into what's next. So here's where we are. I think everybody has just kind of a foundational understanding of how solar works. So solar is a system that goes up on your roof. It collects energy from the sun, and it saves you money because you're not getting that energy from Pico. So the ways you can traditionally do that are cash and loan. That's what we've done for years and years and years. Like I said, since the Bush administration, there has been some tax credit that's existed for when you do a renewable energy project, you're going to get that back on your taxes. So what's changed in 2026 is we no longer have that 30% tax credit for residential homeowners. So if you were to pay cash for a system, you're just paying cash for that system. There's still a good value prop on that, but it has increased the payback period. And we can get into that about what's common about that. This is a really, really wide range of payback period because we want to kind of do this seminar for New Jersey and Pennsylvania. New Jersey and Pennsylvania have wildly different state incentives. So a really good performing system in New Jersey, you're going to have a much lower payback period. A more modest situation in Pennsylvania is going to have a much longer payback period. But what we're seeing in Philly proper is a payback period from anywhere between 11 to 15 years. That's what you're looking at. And the way I kind of represent that is that's fine if that's a good value proposition, but a lot of people are doing solar for financial reasons. And I can't in good faith say that's the best use of your money. It's fine, but a return on investment over 10 years is probably not something you would make in any other space. So I just try and represent it as just that. And then the other option that a lot of people did previously was they took out a loan. And the loan made sense because the loan, you would get the 30% tax credit, which a lot of people wanted. And a lot of times our lending rates were low enough that your utility bill would be offset by the loan, and you'd end up saving money in the short term and the long term. Due to lending rates increasing, that is no longer the case for loans. We're at like a 9% APR right now. And so a loan would be more than your utility bill, which again, if that makes sense to you, that still makes sense to you. But I've always approached solar as like a working class approach where it's ideal in Philly, and Philly has a lot of intergenerational households. And I don't talk to anybody like they're not paycheck to paycheck. That is how I approach all of this, and that is how I explain all of this. And so when I look at this and I go, will this save you, $50 a month? I just represent it as that. And that is all I will do. And it's like some of these loans now, it's like, well, this is going to be about $75 more than your regular bill would be. So I don't find a lot of value in representing that. And that's kind of where it is. But what's new for 2026? Because remember what I said was the tax credit has expired for homeowners, but it has not expired for what's called third-party ownership. That was the wisdom of the Republicans. They say, well, we want these credits to go away, but we don't want to hurt business. So what that means is a leaseholder, someone who owns the system, not an individual homeowner, they can still capitalize on that 30% tax credit. And what they've done is, since they're capitalizing on that 30% tax credit, they've made it very incentivized for a homeowner to get into one of these agreements. Because traditionally, leasing solar, when you could buy solar, was a second best option. You never really wanted to lease it if you could just get your hands on the capital and buy it. You got that 30%. Now, everybody is kind of just in this situation where, yeah, I could pay cash, but there is 30% value tied up in me letting somebody own the system. And there's a lot of benefit and flexibility to doing that. So we have two major things that we're doing. The first one is pretty convoluted, but when you as a government and kind of like make these, like, we wanted this big, beautiful bill to be with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. It was a sledgehammer. And so we have to find creative ways to get homeowners able to access this value so that we can make more, the path for more people to go solar. So the first thing we can do is what's called a prepaid lease. So a prepaid lease is essentially a loan that is held for the first 5 years. You do not own the system. For the first 5 years, a third-party owner is going to own and operate the system. And you are going to take on essentially a 25-year loan that there's no prepayment penalty. And for doing that, you will get a 25% discount on the cash rate. So it is not a 30% tax credit. It is a 25% discount on the system. But it has to be owned by that party for the first 5 years, and then it automatically transfers to you as the owner. That is what a prepaid lease is. And I'll dive into more of these. And if we have specific questions, we'll get more specific about it. And I'm totally fine doing that. But I want to give these high level, here's a path, here's a path, here's the value, here's the value. So I think we can all see the value of a prepaid lease is, if you pay cash, you're just paying cash. If you do this prepaid lease and you let them own it for 5 years, you're getting a 25% discount on what it would cost for cash. That's the value. And we'll get into like what the issues of that would be, like ownership. Why is it cool to own it? Why is it maybe not cool to own it? What do you lose by not owning it? We'll get into that next. But the other option for 2026 that we're seeing a lot of attention to are these PPAs, which is a power purchasing agreement, which has existed before 2025. PPAs have been around. In New Jersey, they've been really good. In PA, they've been okay. But now, in this new landscape, this is how most people are going solar with us. With a PPA, you don't pay anything up front. You don't pay anything for install. All you're doing is agreeing to put the system up there, have it up there, and you're agreeing to purchase the energy the system produces at a rate that's cheaper than Pico. So right now, Pico is about 23 cents. It just raised again on June 1st. With these PPAs, We can get people locked in at anywhere between 12 and 18 cents. And that depends on the size of your roof and how productive the system is. But with these PPAs, you don't pay anything up front. You're just agreeing to purchase the system, purchase the energy it produces at this lower rate. And the beautiful thing about solar states right now is traditionally these PPAs and leases, they've had an escalator. They come along with like generally the industry standard is a 2.9 escalator, which ages not great, ages like milk. At the end of like 20 years, you end up paying a lot more. We have in 2026 a 0% escalator. So what that does is it locks in your PPA rate. So like when I started in solar, Pico was 14 cents. Pico is 23 cents. So what this PPA does is it gives you the ability to lock in at 16 cents, and you have 16 cents for 25 years. There's a lot of power in that. The system is all monitored, maintained, and insured. So you don't have any out-of-pocket expenses. So if an inverter breaks, if a panel goes out, that's all replaced. It's all guaranteed. They have a production guarantee. It's all maintained. It's everything. So it really is just swapping your rate from 23 cents to whatever we can lock you in at for the energy it's producing. And then we'll go into a little bit. I want to show how net metering works, because I think, yeah, okay, that's the last slide. So I want to show quickly my own personal Pico bill and how net metering works, and honestly, how a Pico bill works. And then I have a post-solar, a net metered bill. So we'll go into that. Because when I'm saying 18 cents, when I'm saying 12 cents, my wife, I ran a mock consultation with my wife recently, and she goes, nobody's going to care about pennies. And it like, I was like pulling my hair out because I was like, they have to care about the pennies. How do we get them to care about the pennies? And I don't think that you really can care about the pennies until you know how a Pico bill works. And a Pico bill works like this. Nobody ever looks at the second page of the bill, but this is where they have the itemized breakdown of your bill. This is how they charge you. So what you have is a unit of electricity called a kilowatt hour. And the way they monitor that is through the meter. So at the beginning of the month, they check your meter. They see how many kilowatt hours you have. And at the end of the month, they check your meter. They see how many kilowatt hours you used. You had 634 this month, Jake. Okay, cool. The way that they charge for a kilowatt hour is there's 3 charges here. There's one little sneaky one. There's a customer charge. That's just to be a Pico customer. It's $11.29. That's just to be connected to the grid. And the way Pico does this is they charge you for delivery and supply. So Pico avoids the distinction of being a monopoly by letting you choose your electrical supplier. So some people, they say, oh no, I don't have Pico. I have, Energy Co-op. I have NRG. I have all this. That's your energy supplier. You're still going to have a true kilowatt hour rate that you can add up. But generally, if you're with Pico, everybody's paying about 23 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's your delivery and your supply. Your delivery is just the grid around you. So all the light pole, all the electric poles, everything that's around you that, gets the electricity. Supply is how it's generated. So some people go, well, yeah, I want clean energy. Cool. So then you would go with someone like the Energy Co-op, where you know that your energy for your portion of your house is generating through clean sources, and you might pay more than that. So what we're doing when we have an interconnected solar customer is we are not changing your electrical supplier. We're changing the entire thing. What we have in Pico territory is called one-to-one net metering. It's very coveted. Some parts of the country wish they had it. Some parts of the country used to have it. Now they don't. Now they have slightly worse. But like one-to-one net metering is what makes solar work. So what it is, very simply, is when the energy is produced from your solar system. Well, sorry, before that, they're going to switch out your meter to what's called a bidirectional meter, which is basically a meter that has the ability to spin backwards. So if you produce energy and you don't use it in your home, your meter at that point is going to spin backwards, and you only pay for the net. So if you produce more than you use, you would have a credit that would roll over. That's how solar generates value. So when we talk about all these different paths to doing it, this is the ultimate destination. So if you pay cash for a system, Cool. You don't have you don't have a solar bill. You've just basically pre-bought all the production of that system. So it's very vital that we see what the system produces. That's what delivers the value. And then it just makes sense. Well, what financial avenue gets you to one-to-one net metering? That's up to you and your household situation. So that when we do a solar constellation, that's what we're looking at. We want to see how much the system produces and what's the value. And if we can represent that value, we will. So like I like to say, hey, Pico's 23 cents, we can get you locked in at 16 cents. Some people prefer to hear, well, if you go solar, you can save 30% on your electric bill. That's fine way to represent it, but we want to look at each situation differently. So I look at it and I say, okay, well, here's how we do that. So anyway, that's what we're doing when we're doing a solar consultation, is we want to see what net metering is going to give you. And we do that by looking at your annual consumption and what the system would produce over the same 12-month period. And then we can get into the details and see how much it will save you. And it's going to be somewhere, generally 30 to 50% on your electric bill if it's a PPA or something of the sort. So I have here kindly, because like I said, I'm in the process of going solar. Pico has made, of course, that my system that I went solar with, of course, my system triggered an engineering study. So that means Pico's got to come out. They got to examine the local grid. They drag their feet. I'm in the process. I would love for this to be my bill. This is a friend of mine's bill, but this is what a Pico bill looks like post solar. And I hate when people go, this is what your bill would look like. And I'm showing you an $11 bill. Don't even look at that. I want you to see this part. This is what the bill looks like when you go solar. It's very simply, you have the energy to the grid and from the grid. So you can look and see what'd you produce, what'd you give. So this is energy drew from the grid. So this is how much you drew from Pico. This is how much you kicked back to the grid. So you can see that this one overproduced. So the amount they're paying on this given month, nothing, just the customer charge. And you can see that banked distribution now is 400 kilowatt hours. So they're rolling into the next month. They're rolling into July, starting with 426 units. So a lot of people get into, well, what happens in the winter? This is what happens in the winter. Your bank credits roll up in October, and then you start to eat them up in November. And some systems it'll get you all the way through the winter. Some of it won't. It's okay to not have 100% offset, but this is how it works. You're banked. If you overproduce, it banks down here. Don't get carried away with this number. Get carried away with this number. You can see what the production is. You can see what this is. But this situation does not represent all solar. That's why it peeves me when people go, oh, here's a bill. Look at this bill. It's only $11. Don't you want your bill to be $11? Your bill might not be $11. You might still have $30 from Pico, but you are still saving a significant amount because we have that. If it's a PPA, you're going from 23 cents to 18 cents. That's valuable. It's not as valuable as 100% offset, but it shouldn't be A+ or nothing. Like, there's a lot of value in the C's. There's a lot of value in the B's. And that's why we do this. That's why we look at them. Let me jump back one step and let's go back to the ownership for just 1 second, because I should have organized these tabs a little differently. But when you pay cash, what you're getting is you own the system. And what does that look like in PA? What are the benefits of that? So you do not get the 30% tax credit because it's expired, but what you do get are renewable energy credits. So you get one SREC for every 1,000 kilowatt hours your system produces. And those are kind of like a stock. And right now they're trading at $25 per SREC. So a lot of people think, oh, well, I want to own the system so I can get the SRECs. $25 a pop in PA generally does not make your return on investment period more attractive. But when we look at New Jersey, like, you can see, oh, that is like wildly different, $200. Other markets, it's insane, $400. So when I have this conversation, I have a PA centric conversation. So if you talk to your neighbor and your neighbor's across the river, he's going to tell you a very different conversation. New Jersey is a very different value proposition. DC is a very different value proposition. Here in PA, I meet people where they are and I give them the honest, it's $25 per SREC. It should come into your thinking, but it shouldn't be something that keeps you up at night. Like, oh, they're getting my SREX. Not owning the system is totally okay. There's a lot of value there specifically for our market. If you're talking about New Jersey, if you're talking about California, if you're talking about a far away market, or you're reading something on Reddit and you see, oh, well, owning the system's better. Owning the system's better. It is a hyper specific conversation, hyper local. So this is what I think makes a lot of sense. And this is how I demonstrate the value here in PA. And most people see this situation for what it is and tend to agree. And if you have the money and you have the capital, owning the system is a perfectly good option, but it is by far and away not your only option. And you are not giving up value by saying, oh, you know what? I'm fine with the PPA. I'm fine with doing the prepaid lease. You are totally okay with that. If it makes sense for you financially, it is a good option. And we can get into the breakdowns of the leases, of the PPAs. A lot of people ask, okay, well, what if I want to buy it out? You can buy out the LightReach PPA that we offer anytime after year 6. It's generally pretty comparable to buying the system just after a couple years. That rate we would get into on an individual basis, but you have flexibility. You can also prepay the lease and you get a 5% discount on the remaining payments. So there's a lot of stuff that we can get into on the Q&A that I think maybe is probably a Q&A question. So I think I'll land the plane here.